So imagine this for a moment. You're a mom of two, juggling school drop offs, endless snack requests, and maybe work at the same time. Life is busy, it's messy, but it's familiar. Then one day, you notice something. Maybe it's an opportunity, a gap in the market, or just a fire in your gut saying, I could make a difference here. We could do this. But with that comes the fear. You know the path ahead won't be easy. It'll mean sleepless nights, missed moments, and a whole lot of sacrifices. So, do you step up for the challenge or do you stick to the comfort of what you know? Today, we're speaking with a woman who's faced these very crossroads and said yes. She's been through the sweat, the tears, and pretty much everything in between to turn her vision into reality. For me, her story is raw, it's inspiring, and full of lessons for anyone who's, wrestled with that question. Can I really do it all? Trust me, you're going to want to hear how she, essentially took that leap of faith and what she's learned along the way. So buckle up. This episode is for anyone kind of standing on that edge of possibility, wondering, hey, do I have what it takes? Spoiler alert, you do. What's up, everyone? I'm Jarod Lehn, founder of Socialtopia, and this is Fit for Business 68. And today I'm joined by Sanchia Velez. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. It's our pleasure. I'm really honored to have you here as one of our first guests picking up in the new year, which sounds crazy, but here we are. I was hoping you could potentially kind of give some backstory, shed some light on who you are and, what you do.
Perfect. So my name is Sanchia Velez, and I am a venue owner here in the Hudson Valley. I currently have 3 venues, and our first venue opened in 2013. We are a one-stop shop location for all things parties, milestones, weddings, like literally everything you can think of when it comes to events. And I just love it.
Awesome. Well, welcome. Yeah, I'm excited to kind of, go down into the nitty gritty, kind of like what I opened with, hear more about your backstory, how you got into, being the event planner, the go-to event planner here in the Hudson Valley. So, we were talking the other day, right, Sanchia, and I was just trying to, get more familiarity with what I already know about your business model and, you as a general. So let's go back in time, let's go back like throwback, right? So it's 2008, right? And I think I'm correct with that time.
Yeah.
You could maybe recorrect me. 2008, I believe at that time, a theme come true wasn't a thing yet. You were face painting, doing balloon animals, right? And essentially attending parties, right? That was your stick. That was your hustle at that time, correct?
So that started,
And then,
that was a random, like, I'm going to try this moment in my life. But it was great.
so now, what was it? Was there a company? Were you an entity at that time? Was that a thing, or was it kind of just like?
Yeah, so how it started was like I had mentioned to you that like I went to a birthday party with my kids, and like this terrible costumed character came out that was so dirty, and I couldn't believe that somebody like paid for this person to show up at this party. I was shocked. That was my first light bulb moment, right? Because there's always these light bulb moments. And I was like, if this person got paid to do this, why can't I do the same thing? And I was in a different area, so it wasn't even like someone local to me. It was a whole different, it was probably like Jersey or something. And I right away went home, started researching, YouTube, Google, like all, these are the places that you can actually go to learn how to do something, right? Because all of that's at our fingertips now. And that's how I started my face painting and my balloon twisting, and then got my first characters, so...
And that was, so 2008, I believe you said officially that's when this started. Now, was that the same year you attended this party and you were like, hey, this person's making money doing this god awful thing. I can do this and make it 1,000% better.
It was like within 24 hours. I like went to the party, went home, and I was online like researching and full in, I'm going to do this. So.
And now, mind you, it's 2008. So this is, I hate to date ourselves, but this is 17 years ago, everyone. And now YouTube back then was really just starting out, right? So it wasn't what everybody knows it today. the search functionality. I'm sure you were able to find what you were looking
Yeah.
for, but the amount of people back then are not what it is today in your essentially your space
Yeah.
too. Which I'm sure there was a lot of people doing that back
Mm-hmm.
then, but again, content wasn't really a thing as it is
Yeah.
today. So you started 2008, and now what were you doing at that time before you started this company? Like,
Yeah.
were you in any type of event planning
No.
or birthday party event planning or?
Nothing. I knew nothing. Nothing. I was a baby, just taking her first steps into this field. I had no intention of it being anything other than what I was doing at the moment. I think I learned like
Mm,
four different types of face painting and like three different type of balloon animals, and I was like, all right, I'm starting a company. Like, it was like bare basic stuff. And there was, yeah, there
wow.
really wasn't anything else. What I was doing, I had like a few different jobs. I was waitressing, still trying to
Mm,
figure out like where I wanted to work, because that obviously I needed to work. So, I think between waitressing, but what really changed things was when I started working at a location that was like a bounce house place. So they
okay.
had it was an actual location where people would come, let their kids bounce for like a couple hours and then leave. And I was like, this is really cool. And they had like little birthday parties. They would serve pizza and almost kind of like how a Chuck E. Cheese operated at the time. Very similar, very similar format. And again, another light bulb. I'm like, people are coming to this place. They're getting the same experience every single time they walk through their doors. Like, everything's the same every time they come, but they keep coming. And I was like, how much
Mm,
better would it be if every time they came it was different and you're getting a different experience? So that was light bulb number two.
mm. So now this went on, I believe you said, for roughly like 2008 to roughly about 5 years or so before A Theme Come True
Mm-hmm.
became an entity and
Yes.
company. So what I want to talk about, okay, so in that time, in the 5 year
Mm-hmm.
span, right? What was marketing today wasn't marketing back then,
Mm-mm.
right? It was totally different. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it was more like referral based, words of mouth. Like, hey, Sancha, like just did this for our kid's birthday party. Like, you have to hire her, you have to book her. Like, how are you getting
Yeah.
jobs? What did that look like for you
So
back
it
then?
was newspaper. It was
Mm,
magnets on the car,
love
business
it.
cards, and then I also when I was doing this is like when I was doing the face painting and that stuff. So
Mm,
mostly it was the newspaper, business cards, magnets, like giant magnets on my car with very like
okay,
with like characters on it. So it was a little eye catching. And then of course
sure,
definitely referrals. But yeah, like social media and all of that was like not a thing. So
sure. It was more like the print based kind of
yeah,
format. What we know, photo news, newspapers back
yes,
then. Yeah, for sure. So now let's talk about did you see much success in that time frame, from 2008 to 2013, like periods of growth? Like, what
yeah.
was
It
that like
was
for you?
it was enough to support my kids, their activities, feed us.
Mm,
Like, it was enough of that. It wasn't something that I knew was going to propel me like into a career, and then that's why I
mm,
think that I stayed open-minded to what else can I do, because I'm very
mm,
much a type of person that's just always looking for opportunity. So I
mm,
dabbled into a couple different things. I think that one of my main skills that I learned from all my jobs and from starting that was customer service, right? Because it is all
mm,
about the experience that your customers have with you. So building those relationships and learning how to speak to people and how to give them what they want. That's like really what it's about. So I was searching
mm.
for different like opportunities, things that I can learn and grow
Mm.
from. So it wasn't a
So
money maker. We're talking about
yeah,
300, $400 each time I went
yeah.
out.
So now, I mean, it can add
Yeah.
up, right? But it would be like a lot of jobs, and you'd have
Mhm.
to have multiple versions of you out there doing it and so
Yes.
forth. when did that light bulb number 5, 6, 7, or 8 come around for the next
Yeah,
thing?
so definitely I would say in 2012 is when I had that moment of I wish that there was a place that things could always be different when you walk in the
Mm,
doors, right? Because at the
mm,
time, we had Chuck E. Cheese. We did have what else did we have? We had Chuck E. Cheese. Locally, we have places like the Castle. These are huge
sure.
companies and businesses in the Hudson Valley.
Right.
And but every time you go, you are experiencing the same thing. So, and my kids
Sure.
were little, and I had already done those birthday parties for them. So I was like, I can't
Mm,
go again next year to do the same party. So I was like, there has to be other parents like me that are trying to find something different, because you can't do the same thing over and
right.
over. And honestly, still to this day, I see parents struggling with where to go to host birthday parties, because you're always just trying to do things different, every time you celebrate something. So,
Oh yeah, different theme, different
yeah,
this, different that.
exactly.
How many kids are you gonna
Mm-hmm.
have? Like, who you're not gonna invite because you don't have the
Yeah.
space, or are you gonna do it at
Mm-hmm.
home? But then if you have it at home, you're depending upon the size of your family. Like my wife's family and ours, you could have 100 plus people outside in a tent. Do you really want to set that up, or do you want to
Yes.
pay somebody to do something?
I was really learning from scratch. I didn't have, and my father owned a business, my grandfather owned a business, but the way things were, yeah, the way things were run then was like, your invoices are on paper. You don't even have a screen, right? You're dealing with the buttons.
Yeah.
Like I can't. It's like almost like having typewriters, right? Back then, so everything was just so different. So they couldn't really teach me what I needed to know, as far as like how to be online and have a presence and market myself. So I really was just
Mm,
learning and making mistakes, sometimes using a lot of credit cards just to kind of get things that I needed. That
mm,
credit cards were big for me back then. Made a few mistakes, definitely. I took some marketing risks that also were mistakes that I thought later on I should not have done that. Like taking out like really huge ads. I even did like a advertising bench, where it was like a big we're coming soon, type of thing.
mm.
And I'm
Yeah.
signing contracts and not realizing these contracts I'm signing are for like years, and I can't get out of it, and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
just are so different now than they were at that time. So
So yeah, I mean, what can you talk about real quick? Like you said, your father, your
mhm.
grandfather, I believe you said they had businesses. What type of
Yeah,
businesses
so
were they?
my grandfather in the past, when he came here, um, they were very, very poor, but somebody showed him grace, and he was able to kind of gave him an opportunity to open almost like a tiny supermarket in New York City, and
Okay.
loaned him everything to fill the space, and basically was like, I'm going to fill this store for you. You don't have to pay me now. You pay me later once you're actually up and moving.
Almost like a seller finance type
Yeah,
of
I
thing.
I like I heard these stories later on, and I'm like, that's so crazy to me that somebody, you know, did that for you. But that was how he got his like jump start.
Wow.
Learn that, having this small supermarket, which then later, eventually, then he had a laundromat, and then they had a hardware store. Yeah, so
Really?
it changed over time, but like the legacy and like what he created, starting from nothing and taking these leaps of
Mm,
faith, um, has been a huge blessing for my family, and is actually the reason that I have my business now, because
mm,
my grandparents were able to loan me the funds to start my
mm,
business.
mm.
And not everybody has that. So I'm so grateful for it. um, Obviously there are other ways to
Oh
get
yeah, for
funds
sure.
to start a business. But I was definitely blessed in that aspect. But yeah, I think it's so awesome that that was part of my family line. My grandfather having businesses, my dad eventually doing the same, and then I ended up there not knowing that that was going to be my path. So, you know hmm
So entrepreneurship, you would say, is in
I
your blood.
guess it's like hidden in there. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so that your grandfather, that's your dad's
Yeah,
father, right?
yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely.
Mhm.
It sounds like it to
Yeah.
me. Just does anybody else in the family have that entrepreneurial gene, or is it just the
Just
three
the
of you?
three of us. That's it.
Yeah, it's just the three of you who have that can take the gut wrenching punches daily,
Yeah,
right?
definitely.
This is how it's how it
Mhm.
goes. Okay, so that's a good segue. So you have your family
Mhm.
members who are entrepreneurship, very passionate, very driven. I wouldn't even call it luck, right? You just, sometimes it's about being connected and being
Mhm.
networking, right? And nothing shy of working hard and dedication and showing passion because listen, at the end of the day, I'm not sure who this person was that, helped get your grandfather starting his foot off in the right
Mhm.
direction. But today I kind of visualize that as like seed money as an investor, an
Yes.
angel, kind of capital driven,
Mhm.
right? But again, in that aspect and in that forum, nobody in their right mind is going to do this for anybody if they don't see the value that person
Yeah.
brings, right? Because a relationship is a two-way street, not a
Mhm.
one-way street. So, for me, it seems like it's nothing shy of, again, that hard work and dedication. But segueing now into like a theme come true,
Mhm.
let's talk
Yeah.
about, all right, so the face painting, then when you had the light bulb
Mhm.
that boom, here we are. How'd that
Yeah.
happen?
So, how I said before, like I was looking, trying to see is there a way that there could be a place that's always changing, so I did go online and I tried to, because when you're starting a business you do want to look at for competitors, people that are doing the same thing that you're interested in,
Mm,
or even just learning from another business, right? And I'm searching and searching and searching and I find absolutely no one doing what I have in mind. Like,
mm,
I can't find anything. I found a woman in Canada that had a little spot. It was
okay.
called the Magic Closet. And basically what she did there was she hosted children's birthday parties, like fairy parties, pirate parties, princess parties. She was the only person that I
Mm,
found doing this, which was kind of my idea, was like, okay, doing children's parties and then people being able to pick their theme and I can set it up for them. Almost
sure.
like bringing Disneyland to one location, for these kids. And she was the only person I found, and I couldn't really, connect with her because she wasn't local, so it was difficult. But I did see, what she was doing, and I was like, all right, that's exactly what I want to do. Let me bring that here, and I started looking for just spaces that were for lease locally. And
Mm,
then I found a location in Chester. Just happened to be driving, see a sign in a window, called the number, saw the place, and it was a disaster. It was so run down, like really, really bad. But I
really?
could visually see what it could become, like I was in
Mm,
my brain, I was like, okay, walls, I'm visually like imagining what it could be, and I'm go home
mm.
drawing out little sketches, and my sketches are exactly what my location is now. Like the sketches that I did is exactly what I created there.
So now,
Hmm.
so not backing up, but like, was there a point in time like during the other, the first kind of stepping
Hmm.
stone, where anybody said, "Hey, Sancha, like you should like, we need something like this in this area." Had anybody ever brought that to your attention? Like, hey, have you ever thought about like having these types of places, like these venues,
Hmm.
or this was just something like you kind of said, like, "Hey, I'm gonna do this because I have this idea and nothing here exists in
Yeah,
the
no
area."
one ever brought that up to me at all, at all. It was just an idea in my head that I knew that I needed personally, and I figured other people would. Um, and a lot of people always just tell me like them I'm crazy, and I'm always coming up with something. But my dad always believes in me, so my dad is like, "All right, let's go drive around and like go look for a place." He's like, no matter what I tell him, he's all about all my ideas. So that was it. But yeah, nobody ever brought it up to me. So really, I was the only person with the need that I knew, you know, at the time. So. Hmm.
Mm. Okay, so you had not the doubters per se, but you had people saying like Sansa, like, "Hey, I don't know if I don't know if that will work." You had a lot of
Yeah.
people kind of like chirping your ear
Yeah,
about that.
definitely. The first few people
Mm,
that I mentioned it to definitely weren't like jumping on board with me or thinking that maybe it
mm,
was a necessity. Um,
mm.
yeah. So I definitely had that.
Were you deterrent when you heard that negativity? And it's because I wouldn't, maybe that's the wrong way to, but it kind of is a
Mm-hmm.
negativity tone, right? Because you're like having like, you have this
Yeah.
idea, you have this passion, you're like, hey, this thing in my mind, I know can
Mm-hmm.
work. And then you're hearing somebody probably close to you, it sounds like, saying
Yeah.
this, a few people, and you're like, at some point where you're just like, all right, maybe it's not a good idea.
I never think that way. Ever. I still come up with ideas and I'm like, I'm going to do these things. I don't care what anybody says. So I'm very
Yeah.
much.
So you never let anybody deter you from like what you feel deep down in your
No, the
gut.
only thing that deters me is funds to complete the
Mm,
ideas that I have. That's the only
mm,
deterrent, because you do have to figure out, okay, yeah, I want to do this thing, but it's going to cost me this much to do it. How am I
mm.
going to get that? That's the only deterrent for me.
So you're driving around with your dad at the
Hmm.
time, and you're looking for a spot. You find the spot. It's completely run down, and assuming we're talking about the theme come true location in Chester, New
Yes.
York, where you're at right
Yes.
now, and essentially almost like, I wouldn't say a vision board, but you had this vision in your
Hmm.
mind of like how I want this facility to look like, and you have sketches. Do you still have those
I
sketches?
think I do. Yeah, I think I do.
You made that leap. What does that look like for you?
The leap that I took.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
the
Let's talk about like month one day.
yeah.
What does that look like for you? Like you're like, all right, I have this
Hmm.
space now.
Well,
What?
the big thing was I have this space that's completely run down. I need to I need to put in flooring. I need to put up walls. Ceiling, like it had no ceiling, no floor, no walls. Like it was really bad shape. So that was the first thing, was finding a company to follow my sketch and create what I need. So that, that is where I was able to kind of ask my grandparents to help me out. That's where that was. Because aside from that, like, how was I going to even do that? How was I going to have the funds to build this up, right? So that's how that happened, and that took a few months. It takes time to do renovations, and so now there's no funds coming in, right? We're not doing any parties, nothing's happening. So I'm pouring this money into a place that's not even mine, because I'm leasing it, and then hoping that people actually liked my idea and show up, once I start telling them. And yeah, so
Yeah.
that's when, like, I did the bench. I did a bench at ShopRite, right in Chester.
Oh, one of the benches you see with like people, like the real estate people that
Yes,
stay
yes, one
surrounding.
of those benches, and it had my daughter's face on it in a little princess dress, and and it was front and center at the Chester ShopRite, and I did a grand opening event, and because I had already done like the face painting and the balloons, and I had costume characters, I had all my costumes there to kind of pull people in, like meet your favorite character,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so yeah, we had like a big grand opening event, and
And how was that first
it
grand
was
opening event?
good. It was nice. We had a decent amount of people come through. Um, and we little by little started booking parties. I actually just recently came across the packages that I had when I first opened, and I'm like, how did I stay open?
All right, so yeah, let's. So you were saying you just came across the first packages you created, price points in your head back then when you first opened. What did that look
So we
like?
had I had a $350 package. I had a
Wow.
$499, and my big package was $750.
Now, mind you, people, like, Sansa has commercial space, which is, not a couple $100 a month. I don't, what's the square footage like in this facility?
I want to say like 3,000 ish, full
Right.
the full facility.
Yeah, so for anybody that doesn't know, commercial space is usually, depending upon your demographics, anywhere from like 10, 20, $30 an hour, $30 a square foot,
Mm-hmm.
give or take, right? And I'm not going to give you the specifics, but, for anybody to do the math, that's what you're looking at when you own
Yeah,
commercial space. And now you're thinking you have these price points and you're like, hey, I'm going to have to do X amount of parties to exceed
yeah,
this.
yeah. Crazy. Now that I think back about it, I'm like, I was crazy. But in my mind, that's what people were paying back then for a birthday party at like a Chuck E. Cheese. And I'm comparing it
Sure.
to those places, right? Because why would somebody pay me double when they can have a birthday party at any of these locations, you know?
Mm. So now let's talk
Mm-hmm.
about that. When did you realize you weren't a Chuck E. Cheese and you were above a Chuck E.
Yeah.
Cheese? and you could raise your price points? When did that click, or did somebody say, "Hey, Sanchia, your prices are too low"? How
It
did that
happened in
happen?
actually 2018. and, and then
So five years later, give or
yeah, it
take.
took a while for me to like, cuz I always like
Mm,
I'm a type of person that I can't I don't ever want to like overcharge people. I always want to be like affordable, and I think about myself, like, as a parent, what could I afford to do this type of party for my kids? So
sure.
that's the kind of mindset that I've always had. But then in 2018 I was like, you know what, I'm gonna invest in a new website, upgrade the look, upgrade the location, start offering more. And that was the first time that I was like, okay, I'm gonna raise my prices and see what happens. And that was the best thing I ever did. So it was, because can you imagine having like $350 parties? How many parties I would have to host? And
Sure.
and that's not even me making 350, right? Because I'm including the invitations. I was including the cupcakes, the pizza, the staff. Like I was including. So I'm coming out with like $150 at the end of that party. By the
If I mean, not today,
no,
you weren't.
no. So
Yeah, yeah, especially with price
yeah.
points and inflations. I mean, yeah, I mean, even if you looked at like Fit Kids, in
Mhm.
Central Valley, who has like what would you compare that to? Like a bounce house,
Yeah.
or what's that place
There
in
used to be like a
Middletown that's high
discovery
end?
zone. Like it was like
Yeah,
this cool little kids
those.
activity
I mean,
places.
those you're looking at like $500 to $700 party.
Mhm.
Like we had our kids at the castle, and for the bouncy
Mhm.
thing, and that was like easily $600-700 right there.
Mhm.
So just to put that in comparison of what you're talking about. So
Yeah.
now, do you remember the first ever event you booked for a theme come true? Do you remember the first client, first event you booked,
I
give or
wish
take?
I did. I wish I did, and I don't. I don't remember the first one. Um,
Hmm. Is there anybody that stands out in your mind, like party? Because you've had a lot of great clients throughout the years of
I
helping you
have
guys
amazing
grow.
clients. And there's so many of them that have become personal friends. So I can't even like pinpoint, because a lot of my clients will then request me on Facebook, and now we're watching each other's lives happen, and we just stay friendly over the years. So,
Like what was it like the first few years opening this business, running this
mhm,
business? Like you kind of heard like people hear about entrepreneurship, they watch my videos, they listen to me on Spotify, they hear every other influencer in the world talking about running a business, running the day to day, whether it's like some marketing quote
mhm,
unquote guru, some like person doing X, Y, and Z in the event planning landscape. Is entrepreneurship any different? Is it harder? What does that look like? Are they long? Are there very long days, very long nights, sleepless
yeah,
nights? Can you speak to that?
mhm,
How did that affect you in any mental capacity? Did it affect your family in any way?
yeah.
Like, I kind of wanted to like dive into
Yeah,
that.
so when I first started, I had absolutely no clue about events at all. So even decorating, right? Because now I'm telling people, not only am I going to host your party, entertain your children, feed them, I'm going to also decorate, and it's going to be a great time, right? And I'm making all these promises, but I didn't know what I was doing. I just was really looking at it from a parent standpoint of what I would want, right? Because when we go to these places to do these parties, you know, you might you're the if you really think about a children's party, right? All the parents are standing there. They're just chatting and they're kind of standing around. The kids don't care
Hmm.
about anything. They're running, screaming, playing. But me working in the event, I feel like all eyes are on me, right? All parents can literally just watch me the entire event, and the feeling of like I can't just be standing around. Like I got to be fully entertaining these kids for like the next 2 hours, fully involved. It's a lot of pressure.
1,000% as a parent, I can attest
Yeah,
to that.
like it's a lot of pressure on the person. Now, of course, you might go to a party where the hosts that are supposed to be running the party look disinterested, and as I said before, like I'm all about customer service, so I'm gonna be
Sure.
like on my hands and knees doing what I gotta do to make your kids smile and be happy and enjoy themselves. So it's a full 2 hours of stress, But before that, the setup of the event, the mental designing in my brain, there was times where I was sleeping at my shop because it would take me so long to like not only think of what I wanted to do, get everything that I needed, put it all together, and there was definitely nights where like I was not coming home till 2, 3 in the morning, working
Mm.
all day. And I got 2 little kids. When I started, my kids were small. I was married.
Mm.
My husband at the time also had a job where he was out of the home a lot, so it became very difficult for us to stay together because he was gone,
Mm.
and when he was home, I was gone, and we literally were like not seeing each other at all. So
Mm.
thankfully, I have a supportive family, so my kids were good, because they were going to be with
Mm.
family no matter what. But it did take a toll on my relationship, and I didn't realize all that was involved in putting these events together. So it's a lot of
Mm.
work. Mm-hmm.
Now, if you want to talk about it, we can. If not, it's cool. So, obviously you're married at the time. Was your husband like supportive of like your decision to kind of like, hey, I'm gonna take this entrepreneurship game even further and do X, Y, Z? Was he behind it at first,
Mm-hmm.
not knowing what it was gonna take?
I'm not sure because, as I said, I'm very much like I don't care what anybody thinks. I'm gonna do what I want to do, person.
Yeah. Well, your husband's gonna say to you,
Yeah, like
we
he
know
didn't
that.
really say anything. He kind of just let me do what
Mm.
I wanted to do. I don't think
Okay.
that he wasn't against what I was doing, but I just think neither of us knew how involved it was going to be for me. And then a little bit of me wished that I had more of his support, like all those nights that I was working so late. Do I wish that he came around and was like, "Hey, I'm going to help you." I do wish, at the time, I wish that was the situation, but it wasn't. I ended up feeling like alone in my journey, you know. Um,
That's a topic to talk about for
yeah, so
sure.
I felt alone in it. I felt like I didn't. I guess I was feeling like I didn't have the support. Not that he didn't support me, but not in the way that I maybe needed it at the time. So I felt like it kept me away from the house even more because I was really doing it by myself. Um,
Mm. 'Cause you didn't you didn't like have any like part time or any staff at that time helping you set up or do anything, right?
no,
It was just
just
you.
me. So it was just me. I did try to bring my daughter on. She was like, what was she? She was 13. So try to have her help me. Some of her friends help me. But, they're kids. I can't have kids out at 10, 11 o'clock helping me. And so eventually, over the next few months, I did find someone to help me at the shop. And, and it was great, like, to have at least one other person that can help me do the things, and I can get stuff done a little faster. So, but it took a
Yeah.
while. Hmm.
So you mentioned something that I think a lot of people that are running small businesses, or you want
Hmm.
to classify yourself as an entrepreneur, right? Um, that sense of
Hmm.
loneliness. I can attest. I feel that sometimes, even though I have an amazing
Hmm.
support system in my wife and my family who have my back in every which way, but there is that sense of feeling, and I think for whatever reason, entrepreneurs have that mindset like, hey, I'm alone in this.
Yeah.
And I always like, why do we feel that
Yeah.
way? Why do we feel like we're alone, even though physically, maybe our spouse or
Hmm.
our loved one at the time is, at the house or at the next room,
Hmm.
it's just like, you're not alone in that, right? It's just like, but why is that, right? Why do you think that
Yeah.
is?
I just think that we wish that I think we want our partner or our spouse to understand what we're doing a little better, and then offer support, like at least offer to like maybe jump in, do a couple things, help. I think that deep down we want that, but maybe we don't express it to anyone because we
Mm,
also feel like, well, this is my thing, like my
sure.
responsibility. I'm the one that decided to do this, not them.
Mm,
So, um, and if they're not in the line of work that you're doing, then it actually makes no sense for them to even help you because they don't even know, they don't even know the thing.
I
Yeah,
have
they don't
no
even
clue.
know,
Yeah,
so you can't really say, hey, like, send these emails, do these contracts. Like, it'd be great if they did.
sure.
But so I think that
But you get, yeah, but you get what I'm
Yeah.
saying. It's just that sense. Even if they are supportive, is like what I'm saying. But like, you're not alone in that sense. Like I know
Mm-hmm.
anybody I've spoken to. Like, what about not even like relationships in the form of like a husband or a wife or a
Yeah.
spouse, right? What about like friendships? Could you say that over time, since you've been running this business, not necessarily you've burned
Mm-hmm.
bridges in the sense of friendships, but like you've lost contact with your friends since this has happened? Has that happened to you? Have you seen that like your friendships have kind of dwindled down because you're so consumed and focused, not only like with your
Yeah.
children, right? Because that's like your
Mm-hmm.
priority, but your business is your main
Yeah.
priority.
I don't think so. Now for me, maybe it's a little different because I was actually a really young mother, so
Mm,
I lost a lot of that a long time ago. Like I
mm,
had my first daughter when I was 18, so I didn't
sure.
get to experience like the large group of friends, the
Mm,
college, I didn't get to experience any of that stuff. So I've been since 18 having a very very small circle of friends. Um,
mm,
there's about there's two more, like it's me and two more people really, that are like my close group,
yeah.
and we're all mothers, so I didn't feel that. I didn't feel like when I started my business, I was like I was, not hanging out, not doing the things that I was doing
Mm,
before. So I don't feel that I came across that, but I do think that some people do. Like I feel like being an entrepreneur, you aren't able sometimes to attend and do things that maybe you used to do. Like I definitely for sure don't invite me nowhere on the weekends because I'm not available.
we know what you're doing, and if people don't know what you're doing, you're an event
Yeah.
planner, meaning most of your 99.9% of your events are happening on Friday, Saturday,
Yeah,
Sunday.
yeah. So
Yeah, that's
weekends
awesome.
are
Yeah.
out. Like, don't invite me anywhere. And even vacations, like family vacations and stuff. I'm like, oh, we could go Monday to Thursday. We can go on vacation, So, yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. Like my family went on a vacation over spring break, and I did not go. I stayed back.
Yeah.
Although I could, kind of pick and go where I want based on the type of
Yeah.
position and what I'm doing in life, but I just, I'm so into it. I just was like, guys, I got to sit this one out.
Yeah.
If there's a couple of summer vacations coming up, and I'm like picking and choosing what I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
attend and not attend, and those like kind of like sometimes I always have that mindset: is the sacrifice worth it?
Mm-hmm.
As when myself, I have the two small little children as
Yeah.
well, and it's like I try to be there for the big things and the little things. I'm like, all right, I can
Mm-hmm.
this and this, but I'm not gonna definitely never ever gonna miss
Yeah.
this. Um, so okay, we're talking about some great stuff, some
Mm-hmm.
bad stuff along the way here in the journey of your entrepreneurship. Um, not so growing up, my family, shed some light. I had my mother and my sister who were living with us here in the Hudson Valley, basically predominantly all my life. My mother and father back then, my dad was around till I was like, I don't know, 2 years old.
Mm.
Um, always in my life though. I love you, Dad. I have a great, solid relationship with him now. Back then, not so much. He wasn't really around. He was a weekend
Mm.
dad at best. And growing up, I was that guy, child that didn't have a
Mm.
dad. My mom was around, and my mom, God bless her, did her best to raise two children. One of them that was pretty high strung and wild, and being
Mm.
me. Um, so kind of like where I'm going with that is, learning to like navigate like challenges and tough times. I think sometimes I think there's something to that, like when like you're trying to run and operate a small business and being an entrepreneur. Like I see that more and more and more with people I speak to that are like in this type of environment and doing these types of things. But like where I was going with that, which I'm getting to, having had your relationship not work for
Mm-hmm.
you, right? And then having that unfold and you're running your business, you're trying to grow your business, you're trying to manage your children and just live your
Mm-hmm.
life. Did you see any effects from that on the business? Like did that dwindle a little bit, or did you see it still stay steady? Were you able to hold your own? Because like, listen, let's be honest. I mean, you're human. I mean, it's an emotional roller
Mm-hmm.
coaster at that point in your life, right? You have your business, you have your two small children. You're working these late nights. You're going through this with your ex
Mm-hmm.
partner. what kind of toll did that take on
I think that I think it helped me because sometimes, and not only with my ex, I had an ex before that.
you?
When I was became a young mom, the sometimes people, like, no matter how much you love them and you care about them, they hinder you from growth, right?
Mm,
And I definitely had that with the ex that was my first daughter's father, and then being married. Sometimes you feel guilty for like doing certain things, so you don't do them because you just feel like you
mm,
feel guilty that you're going to be away or that you're not going to be around, and so you don't
mm,
grow because those things, those leaps of faith that you could have taken would have propelled
mm,
you into maybe something really great, and you stop yourself because you're like, oh, I gotta, like, I can't do that because I gotta stay home, I gotta be here. So I'm actually really, we have a great relationship now. Like, we get along, we've always gotten along even though we've separated, and it ended up being really amazing for both of us. Like, his career
mm.
took off, my business took off, and now
Yeah.
all these years later, we're kind of like, if we look at each other, we're like, damn, we could have been living the life, both of us, with like two amazing careers, but compatibility wise, it wasn't going to
Mm,
work. So I'm
mm,
grateful that we were able to still be like really great parents, co-parent. My daughter, still had a fantastic life with both of us, even though we weren't living
mm,
together. It all really worked out for us, and we
mm.
were adults
It's
about
awesome.
it. So yeah, so
Yeah, and
yeah.
congratulations. I mean, it obviously it panned out and it worked out, and it reflects on
Mhm.
your children, um, and that's
Mhm.
huge, right? I saw that in my parents too. They were like best friends, and when I was younger, I'm like, what do you guys like? I didn't understand
Yeah.
it. I'm like, hey, mom and dad aren't together, and they were never divorced. They were only
Mhm.
separated back then, and I was just like, I always looked at it like so weird, but now
Yeah.
fast forward to today, I totally understand it, and I can conceptualize and I get it.
Yeah.
Um, so you know you're a hard
Mhm.
worker, you're dedicated, you're determined. You basically, what I've gathered and just even knowing you now, for quite some time, and what I know, like, you won't take kind of like no for an answer type of thing,
Mhm.
and even if something is difficult, you don't stand back
Mhm.
down. um, were you always like that in your life, even like as a teenager, child? Like, did you have that tenacity,
Mhm.
or is that something you found out of like motherhood, or out of just like kind of just getting older? Was that something that you always had?
Um, I don't think that it's something I always had.
Mm,
I think it just like became me.
mm,
I definitely didn't. Not that I didn't have direction when I was younger. You know what? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was always there because when I was like when I was younger, 12, 13 years old, I started singing, and like in chorus in
mm,
school, and I was like, oh, I like actually really like singing. Maybe I could be a singer one day. And I do remember calling every recording studio in the Yellow Pages as a 13-year-old and having full conversations with random people that I didn't know, telling them that I wanted a record deal. So, yeah,
that's an
that is so
amazing
crazy,
story.
right? That's like the one story
Yeah.
of my childhood that I never forgot. And then eventually I did get a call from LaFace Records, which was Babyface's record label.
Yeah,
Remember LaFace?
I
Yeah.
do know
I
that.
got a call from
Yeah.
LaFace Records. They wanted me to send them my demo tape, and I didn't know what a demo tape was. I didn't know how to do a demo tape, and I never sent it.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh, really?
and I was 13 years old, and I never sent it.
That's a wild story. Babyface, we're gonna send this to you. I don't know if you remember.
I'm like,
Of course, I know who Babyface
yeah,
is. He's produced many, Billboard hits.
and I
That's
can't. And then I
wild.
think about it now, and I'm like, but I didn't tell my parents that I did any of that. I was like, because I just did it on my own, didn't tell anyone, so I couldn't really say, hey, I need a demo tape. Like, I have to send it to this place. I just let it fizzle away from me. After I did all that work and made all those calls and actually got a call back. But
And that kind of like stuck with you when you
yeah,
grew
when
up.
I grew up, the fact that I even did that, I was just like, wow, like 13 years old, making these moves. Like, I didn't realize it then, but now when I look back, knowing that I did that, I was
Mm,
like, man, I really did have that drive to kind of go
mm,
for the things that I wanted. So,
mm. Like, were you upset with your younger self for not going forward with it, or were you like happy with like like you taking
yeah.
initiative to do it, and you're like, hey, I'll
hmm
never back down from anything ever
I
again,
think
type
I
of
was
thing?
disappointed that I didn't
Mm,
know how to do it. I
mm,
even wrote a letter, like my little script letter that I was going to send to the Face Records apologizing for not sending my demo tape. I have it. I'm sure it's still somewhere in my house.
here's their apology video now.
Yeah, it's so weird, but like that happened to me, and I don't regret it now. I'm fine
Yeah.
with it. I'm just proud of the girl that I was at that time that took the initiative to even think that I could land a record deal at 13 years old by calling random people out of the yellow pages. So
Yeah,
yeah,
no,
so it's pretty
absolutely.
cool.
So I guess I want to, there's one thing I wanted to ask about. I don't really talk about too much, but I'm kind of coming more terms with things in my life. Would you say that you are a person of faith?
Yes.
So you believe in God, you practice, like how does that
Yes.
in your
Yeah, I
life?
think that so yes, I do try to attend a local church as much as I can. I
Mm,
and it's hard cuz that's on Sundays. So so it's hard for me, but sometimes I find like when there are Sundays open in my line of business, I'm like, okay, this is a blessing for me because I can actually go
mm,
and attend church and like and feel and feel that. So I do think that I'm a very faith based person,
mm,
and I do have to be grateful for the things that have happened for me, even the bad things, right? Like sometimes bad things happen to you, and you can take
sure.
those bad experiences, and you can throw yourself in a hole, or you can climb right out of it and just become a bigger and better person. So yeah, and that's kind of some terrible things have happened to me. So but I just like I keep moving forward, and I just grow from them, and I think that having the faith that things will always get better um is what keeps me going. So
So I mean, I love it, and that's great, and thank you for sharing. One thing I wanted to ask you for anybody listening, anybody watching that maybe potentially they want to be an event planner. What's one piece of advice you would give somebody that's man or woman thinking about becoming an event planner?
mhm.
What's like the most three key important steps he or she could take to start their event planning business and start to become more known,
Mhm.
become more successful, and just make things
Yeah.
happen?
So
Would you have any advice for anybody
yeah,
watching?
so for anybody that's like thinking of starting something in the event planning industry, and there's just so many different routes that you can take, it's just taking the first step, right? That's the hardest part. Even if you don't know how to do anything at all, there's so many opportunities for you to learn for free. There's ways for you to learn for free. There are classes that you can take, and eventually in the future, a goal of mine is to have some educational courses and teach people the do's and don'ts of event planning and how to start a business. So, but there's so much stuff out there for you, and that's how I started. So, but it is about putting in that dedication, right? You take the first step and you decide, okay, yes, I am going to do it, and then the next step is actually throwing yourself full force into the late hours of studying and learning your craft and starting. I didn't know what I was doing. So when I look back at the first parties I did, I'm like, people paid me for this. Like, but back then parties weren't what they are now. Now
Sure.
I was like cutting paper, trying to make decorations out of cut paper that I printed at Staples. And now
Yeah. Now things have
now I can
adapted.
like I can blow a photo of myself up like 10 feet tall and and prop it up, so it's just so different. But
Yeah.
you have to start somewhere, putting getting yourself educated on what it is that you want to do, and being comfortable with talking to people is really the biggest thing, because you could be so good at something, but if you're afraid to tell people and talk to people and let them know that you even do the thing, you can't move. You can't really move too far from there. So
What piece of advice would you give for somebody that is apprehensive, like they don't like to network, they're not comfortable with interacting with people, but like, hey, let's face it, that's the way you're going to grow your
yeah.
business. The more people you tell, the more people are going to know about your
Mm-hmm.
business, word of mouth, marketing.
Like
Like,
advice.
hey, I'm scared to like talk to people, Sancho. What should I
Yeah.
do?
So I would say start putting yourself around other people that are they don't
Mm,
even have to be in the same industry, but just like networking and meeting people. Even though you're scared, it's easier to meet somebody that kind of does the same thing that you do, or similar to what you want to do, and kind of just growing those friendships first, and then you can head
yeah,
out to the strangers and other people once you're comfortable
yeah,
with a crew of people that like are similar to you. So yeah, so find like a little core group of friends that maybe you can connect with, discuss business ideas with, and then you'll become more
yeah.
comfortable speaking and you can talk to more people.
So success doesn't happen overnight, as we know,
Nope.
right? Could take
Mm-hmm.
years, could take a decade, could take 2 decades. What piece of advice would you give for someone looking for a quick win? Because we know that doesn't
A
happen.
quick win.
Yeah, somebody's like, hey, I want to be an entrepreneur, but I'm trying to succeed quickly. I mean, what would you say to somebody that was having a conversation with you right now, saying, hey, yeah, I'm like looking to be like you, Sancho. I want to start my business today and be successful
Yeah.
tomorrow. What piece of advice would you give to me or the people
Yeah, it's not that
watching?
easy, but I think I would share some don'ts. Like yeah, you want to be successful. It's gonna take time, but here are some things that like definitely don't do these things. you know, um, so there
What
would
are
be
those
some.
three things? What are three things that they shouldn't do?
So to me, I think that making purchases uh, for major items or major things
Mm,
that you don't know if they're going to be even requested of you, right? Like I know I spent money on stuff that I thought people were going to ask me for and never asked me for it. And I spent thousands and thousands of dollars on certain things. So
mm,
I think starting with the basics, you know, like for instance, I recently had a conversation with someone that is in the process of opening an event space in the Bronx, and I said you need three types of table linens: black, white, ivory. That's it. No red, no purple, no pink, no, none of that. Just ivory, black, white. That's where you start. That's what you offer.
mm.
Because imagine if you had to have a tablecloth in every single color, how much money you'd be spending. And that's in
Sure.
anything. So you're a balloon artist. Okay, do you need 5,000? There's 5,000 colors of balloons, like no, you start with
Yeah,
gold, silver, black, white, like the real
the
basics.
basics.
So I think that
Yeah,
that would be my thing for someone, like whatever your field is, start with the basics and don't go to get ahead of yourself like 20 steps. Start at step 1. So,
yeah.
yeah.
No, I love it. Listen, I can't thank you enough for joining us here on the Fit for Business podcast today. It's been a
Yes.
pleasure. We really enjoyed having you
Thank
on, Sancho.
you.
And, thank you so much again. And for everybody watching and listening, if you haven't already subscribed to the Fit for Business podcast, please go ahead and tap that subscribe button on YouTube. And if you're listening on Spotify, go ahead and tap that follow button. We'll see you all next week.
Thank you.